It might begin as a spark, a magnetic pull that draws two souls to each other. But when that spark meets the quiet distance of an avoidant heart, it becomes something far more complex. The person with avoidant tendencies doesn't reject love outright. Instead, they hold it carefully, almost fearfully, as though too much closeness might cause it to vanish. Dynamic creates a dance of desire and withdrawal, of yearning for intimacy and running from it at the same time. To understand avoidant love is to understand a paradox. Someone who craves connection but fears being consumed by it. Someone who appears independent but is silently haunted by the need to be understood and accepted without losing themselves at first. An avoidant person can appear completely self-assured. They might seem confident, composed, and emotionally balanced. Their independence can be magnetic, their calmness a relief to those who have experienced chaotic relationships. That calm exterior lies a deep-rooted discomfort with vulnerability. The avoidant individual has often learned early in life that emotional closeness can lead to pain, disappointment, or rejection. They have built protective walls not out of arrogance, but out of survival. The message they internalized long ago is that needing someone too much is dangerous, and that love, while beautiful, is also unpredictable and potentially suffocating. So they keep their feelings hidden, expressing affection through actions rather than words, keeping space between themselves and their partner to preserve a sense of control. In relationships, this pattern becomes both fascinating and frustrating. The partner of an avoidant individual may feel a deep connection one moment and then experience distance the next, as if the emotional bridge between them has suddenly disappeared. When things become too intimate, when the relationship begins to demand openness and emotional availability, the avoidant person instinctively retreats. They might distract themselves with work, hobbies, or solitude. They may downplay the importance of the relationship or criticize their partner to create emotional distance. It is rarely done consciously. It's a learned reflex, a way of protecting their inner world from what feels like intrusion. To love an avoidant person is to experience both closeness and absence, sense deep affection that never fully materializes into consistent emotional presence. Yet behind this avoidance lies a longing that is often invisible, even to the person themselves. Avoidant individuals yearn for love and intimacy just like anyone else. They want to be known, to be seen, to feel safe in someone's arms without fear of losing their independence. Their detachment is not a lack of care, but a misguided attempt to preserve their sense of safety. They believe that by controlling how much of themselves they give, they can prevent heartbreak or rejection. The irony is that this same control often creates the very loneliness they fear most. They keep love at a distance to avoid pain, but in doing so, they end up feeling unseen, misunderstood, and isolated. Healing from avoidant love patterns begins with awareness. It requires understanding that independence and intimacy are not enemies. They can coexist. A person can be strong and still need others. Love deeply without losing their sense of self. For an avoidant person, this realization does not come easily. It demands vulnerability, the willingness to sit with discomfort, the courage to trust that emotion closeness will not lead to suffocation or loss. This is not about tearing down walls all at once, but learning to open small doors to let another person in gradually to communicate rather than withdraw when fear arises. True connection cannot be built on avoidance. It requires the slow, steady building of trust through small, consistent acts of openness. Partner of someone avoidant, patience and understanding are essential. It can be painful to love someone who seems distant or detached, but empathy is the bridge that can make connection possible. Recognizing that avoidance is rejection, but fear allows the partner to approach with compassion rather than frustration. The goal is not to force closeness, but to create a space where the avoidant person feels safe to be themselves, a space where love is not demanding but inviting. When the avoidant individual senses that they will not be controlled or judged for needing space, they begin to relax into the relationship. Slowly their defenses soften, starts to feel less like a threat and more like a shared freedom. It's important to understand that avoidant love is not broken love. It is love shaped by fear, love that has learned to survive by staying silent. It can evolve into something deeply authentic when both partners are willing to grow together. Avoidant individuals can learn to communicate their fears, to express affection more openly, and to lean into connection instead of withdrawing from it. They can learn that true strength lies not in self-protection, but in the ability to be vulnerable. The partner, in turn, can learn to balance empathy with boundaries, offering love without losing themselves in the process. Together, they can transform avoidance into awareness and distance into depth. Every relationship within us, for the avoidant person, love reflects the fear of being overwhelmed or rejected. For their partner, often reflects the desire to be chosen and cherished despite the distance. When both recognize these patterns, love becomes a teacher rather than a battlefield. Avoidant person can begin to see that intimacy is not a trap, but an expansion of the self. The partner can understand that closeness does not have to be forced, but can be nurtured through trust, patience. It's a process that demands honesty, not just with one another, but with oneself. The truth is that everyone carries some level of avoidance within them. We all have moments when closeness feels too intense or when we fear losing our independence. The difference is in how we respond to that fear. Some run from it, others learn to face it. Avoidant lovers' journey is not about erasing their independence, but learning that love does not have to threaten it. It's about realizing that intimacy and individuality can exist side by side, that vulnerability is not weakness, but the foundation of real connection. In learning to open their heart without fear, the avoidant person doesn't lose themselves. They finally find the freedom they've been seeking all along. The deeper you go to the world of avoidant love, the more you begin to understand that it isn't indifference that drives the distance, but fear. It's a quiet fear that lives beneath the surface. The fear of being known too deeply, seen in all one's imperfections, of being dependent on someone else and losing control. This fear often comes from early experiences where closeness felt unsafe or where vulnerability was met with rejection or neglect. When love first presented itself as something that could hurt, the heart learned to close its doors. The avoidant individual learned to survive by staying self-sufficient, convincing themselves that needing others was a weakness, and that emotional detachment was strength. But in truth, this detachment is not strength. It is a shield, a wall built out of pain and self-protection. When you interact with someone who has avoidant tendencies, it can often feel like being caught in a wave that keeps pulling away just as you reach for it. You might sense connection one moment and emptiness the next. Warm, attentive, even affectionate, and then suddenly they withdraw, become quiet, or immerse themselves in distractions. It's not that they've stopped caring. Rather, the closeness has triggered an internal alarm. To them, emotional intimacy feels dangerous, almost suffocating. Their mind begins to whisper that they're losing control, that they're too exposed. The other person might expect too much from them. So they retreat into silence, into work, independence, not to punish the other person, but to protect themselves from a feeling they don't yet know how to manage. I avoidant love, the push and pull is constant. The avoidant partner wants to connect but fears being trapped. They desire love but dread losing themselves in it. This inner conflict makes relationships with them unpredictable and confusing. Express care actions, small gestures, quiet loyalty, moments of presence, but they often avoid deep emotional conversations or expressions of vulnerability. To them, I need you, or I can't do this without you, sound like surrendering their power, and power for the avoidant heart has always been safety. Yet underneath the surface lies a longing for exactly what they run from: the warmth of closeness, the safety of being understood, the comfort of knowing someone will stay even when they lower their guard. To love someone avoidant is to navigate through contradictions. You may find yourself overanalyzing their silences, trying to decode their behavior, wondering if they care at all. But the truth is, deeply, they just don't know how to show it without feeling vulnerable. Their love language is space, their affection is control, and their comfort zone is distance. To connection lies not in forcing closeness, but in creating safety. When they feel safe enough to open up without fear of being judged, smothered, or trapped, their walls begin to soften. Share more of their inner world, even if it's in small, hesitant ways, a moment of honesty, a rare confession, a quiet act of trust. These are milestones in the world of avoidant love, subtle but significant signs that the heart is learning to risk again. For avoidant individuals, love becomes a mirror reflecting their deepest insecurities. They fear that closeness will expose their flaws, that love will demand something they cannot give, or that once they let someone in, they will lose their independence. This fear creates a cycle of self-sabotage. They withdraw to feel safe, but in doing so, they create the loneliness they're trying to avoid. They end up confirming their deepest fear, that closeness leads to pain. But this cycle can be broken. Healing begins the moment they start to challenge the belief that love means losing control. It begins when they understand that vulnerability does not mean weakness. It means courage. To stay open in love, even when afraid, is one of the bravest things a human being can do. Avoidant love isn't cold, it's cautious. It's the kind of love that moves slowly, testing the water before diving in. It often hides behind humor, logic, or business. It doesn't rush into "I love you" because those words carry too much weight. They imply surrender, trust, and exposure. When the avoidant person begins to trust, their love can be profoundly steady. They may not be overly expressive, but they show up when it matters. They offer consistency in their own quiet way. What they need most is a partner who understands that their distance is not a rejection, but a form of self-protection, and that beneath the silence, there is often an unspoken desire to connect, to belong, safe enough to love freely. The challenge for those who love avoidant individuals is learning not to take their withdrawal personally, to feel rejected or unwanted when someone pulls away emotionally, but understanding that their behavior stems from fear rather than lack of affection changes everything. Instead of chasing, demanding, pressuring them for more closeness, the partner can learn to provide calm reassurance, not through words of desperation, but through consistency, patience, and grounded presence. When they see that love doesn't have to mean losing freedom, that connection doesn't erase individuality, their fear begins to dissolve. Emotional safety, not intensity, the bridge that connects the avoidant heart to intimacy. Avoidant individuals must also learn to communicate their needs and fears. Many times, they don't realize that their silence or withdrawal sends painful messages to the one they love. They assume their partner should understand without words, yet emotional clarity comes only through expression. Learn to say, "I need a little space, but it doesn't mean I don't care," or "I get scared when things feel too intense," can make a world of difference. These small admissions build trust and reduce misunderstanding. It's not about transforming overnight, but about creating small moments of honesty that slowly replace avoidance with connection. In truth, avoidant love isn't about the inability to love. It's about the inability to feel safe in love. It's about the fear of being engulfed or abandoned, and the inner conflict that keeps the heart in survival mode. Love was never meant to be a battlefield. It was meant to be a bridge. When an avoidant person learns to let someone cross that bridge, to stand beside them rather than against them, Intimacy doesn't erase their identity. It enriches it. They learn that it's possible to be close and still be free, to love deeply and still maintain boundaries, to be known and still be safe. The process of unlearning avoidance takes time. It requires gentle awareness, compassion for oneself, and the courage to stay when every instinct says to run. Facing the discomfort that arises when someone truly sees you, not the version you show the world, but the real you beneath the armor. And it means believing that love can be a safe place, not a battlefield. When avoidant individuals embrace this truth, their love transforms. It becomes a love grounded in trust, one that no longer hides behind fear, but flows naturally, steadily, and honestly. They begin to realize that the very thing they've been avoiding, closeness, is also the thing their soul has been longing for the most. The journey of avoidant love is not a simple path of cold detachment. It is a quiet battle between the desire for closeness and the fear of being swallowed by it. The avoidant lover lives in this tension every day. And the thin line between wanting connection and protecting their solitude. They are not incapable of love, nor are they heartless. In fact, their sensitivity runs deeper than most realize. This very sensitivity that taught them long ago to guard their emotions fiercely. To love for them is to risk exposure, to risk rejection, and to risk losing control. So they build walls that feel safe and impenetrable. Yet, these walls that protect them also imprison them, keeping them from experiencing the very love they crave the most. An avoidant person often learns their coping mechanisms from early experiences where emotional closeness felt dangerous or overwhelming. Perhaps as a child, they were scolded for expressing too much emotion, told to be strong, or made to feel that their needs were a burden. Perhaps they reached for affection and were met with indifference. Over time, the heart learns to adapt. The child who once longed for comfort grows into an adult who equates independence with safety. They become masters of control, their feelings neatly folded and their hearts carefully guarded. They promise themselves never to rely too much on anyone, believing that self-sufficiency is the only way to avoid disappointment. But love, by its very nature, demands vulnerability. It asks for the very thing the avoidant person fears giving: openness, trust, surrender. When such an individual enters a relationship, they often begin with enthusiasm. The initial connection feels exciting and safe because it is still light and unthreatening. But as intimacy deepens, as the emotional stakes rise, a quiet panic starts to form. Avoidant lover begins to sense that the relationship is becoming too intense, that their independence is slipping away, that someone is getting too close to the parts of themselves they've long kept hidden. Their instinct to retreat, they may start creating distance subtly, becoming less communicative, less affectionate, more focused on their work or personal space. The partner, confused and hurt by the sudden shift, may interpret it as rejection or loss of love, yet in reality it's fear, a defense mechanism against perceived emotional danger. This pattern can create a painful dynamic of pursuit and withdrawal. The more one partner seeks closeness, the more the avoidant pulls away. The more the avoidant distances, the more the other feels insecure and chases for reassurance. It becomes a dance of emotional misalignment, one moving forward while the other steps back. The tragedy is that both partners want the same thing, to feel loved and secure, but they express their needs in completely opposite ways. The avoidant believes safety comes from distance, while the partner believes safety comes from closeness. Without understanding, this dance can lead to frustration, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. Yet with awareness and compassion, become the starting point for deep healing and growth. For the avoidant person, healing begins with the recognition that independence and intimacy are not mutually exclusive. Possible to love deeply without losing oneself. It is possible to depend on another without becoming weak. Emotional closeness does not have to mean suffocation. It can mean mutual strength. To arrive at this realization, the avoidant must first confront their fears, not to erase them overnight, but to sit with them, to question where they come from, to understand that the danger they sense in intimacy is often a ghost from the past, not a reality of the present. They must learn to differentiate between the fears of their inner child and the truths of their adult self. In doing so, they begin to reclaim power over their emotional world. For their partner, the path requires patience, empathy, and clear boundaries. Loving an avoidant person can be deeply rewarding, but also challenging. It's easy to fall into the trap of trying to fix them, to overextend in hopes of drawing them out, but the more pressure they feel, the more they withdraw. The key is to create a sense of emotional safety, to let them know that they can be themselves, that their space will be respected. And that closeness does not mean control. The partner's steadiness, not their intensity, helps the avoidant feel safe enough to open up. When they see that love doesn't demand constant exposure but allows for breathing room, their fear begins to fade. They begin to experiment with vulnerability in small doses, testing whether it's truly as dangerous as they once believed. Avoidant individuals often express love in unconventional ways. They may not be verbal or overly affectionate, but they show care through consistency, dependable in crisis, through acts of service or small gestures that reveal loyalty and commitment. Their love is quiet but steady. However, when stress or emotional conflict arises, they might revert to withdrawal or detachment as their first line of defense. In those moments, understanding rather than confrontation helps the relationship survive. It's about knowing that silence doesn't always mean apathy and distance doesn't always mean disinterest. Often it means overwhelm, an internal struggle between fear and desire, self-protection, longing. As avoidant individuals begin to confront their fears, they discover a truth that changes everything. Love does not require the loss of independence, but the acceptance of interdependence. Real strength lies not in avoidance, but in the ability to stay open despite fear. When they risk vulnerability, they find that it doesn't destroy them. It deepens their capacity for connection. Each small act of openness, a shared emotion, a heartfelt confession, a moment of genuine presence, chips away at the old belief that intimacy equals danger. Slowly, love begins to feel less like a threat and more like a partnership. The walls that once guarded them become unnecessary as they learn that the right kind of love respects space while also nurturing closeness. To heal avoidant love is to transform fear into trust, elation into understanding, and control into surrender. It's a process that takes time, often marked by small victories. A deeper conversation, an apology shared, a moment of staying instead of running. The avoidant learns that emotional safety is not about walls, but about connection built on honesty and respect. The partner learns that patience is not weakness, but wisdom. That real love is not about constant closeness, but mutual freedom. Together, they create a love that honors both individuality and intimacy. What makes avoidant love so human is that it represents a universal struggle. Every heart has its defenses, every soul its scars. Some fear being alone, others fear being too close. But at the core, everyone is searching for the same thing, a love that feels safe, a bond that doesn't demand perfection, a connection that allows for imperfection and still chooses to stay. Avoidant individuals are not broken, learning a new language of love, one that balances self-protection with emotional openness. With self-awareness, compassion, and the willingness to grow, transform their fear of closeness into a deeper appreciation for real, healthy connection. The beauty of this journey lies in its gradual unfolding. Avoidant love, when healed, becomes one of the most resilient forms of love, grounded, balanced, and deeply authentic. It teaches that true connection is not about losing yourself in another, but finding yourself alongside them. Reminds us that love is not about control, but about trust, not about perfection, but about presence. And in that realization, the avoidant heart finally finds peace, the kind that comes not from isolation. It might feel it's safe to be both strong and vulnerable, independent and connected, alone and loved. When an avoidant person begins to love, they often do so with quiet intensity, hidden beneath layers of restraint. They rarely announce their feelings, but their affection exists in subtle acts, in the spaces between words, in the small ways they care without drawing attention to it. To the outside observer, their love may seem hesitant or incomplete, but beneath that calm surface lies a deep yearning to connect, to be understood, and to belong without losing oneself. Yet love for them feels like both a gift and a threat. It offers warmth, but also invites exposure. It promises closeness, but risks the loss of control. And so they love cautiously, testing the waters, trying to balance intimacy with autonomy, affection with self-preservation. In the world of avoidant love, emotional safety is everything. It is not that they do not want to love. They have learned to associate love with pressure or loss of freedom. They may have grown up in environments where their needs were overlooked or where emotional dependence was met with rejection or ridicule. From those experiences, they internalized the lesson that became a guiding principle to survive: you must not need too much. So as adults, they seek relationships that allow them to maintain their independence, create invisible boundaries that keep them from feeling too vulnerable, too dependent, or too exposed. Yet behind those boundaries, they often feel the ache of loneliness, a quiet longing that they struggle to admit even to themselves. It's as if they are forever caught between wanting to reach out and fearing what will happen if they do. The partner of an avoidant individual often finds themselves walking a delicate emotional line. They sense the love that exists, but can't always feel it. They want more openness, more expression, more closeness, but each time they push for it, the avoidant retreats further. This cycle can be exhausting and confusing. The partner begins to wonder if they are asking for too much, their expectations are unreasonable, or if they are simply unlovable. But the truth is, avoidant individuals are not withholding love out of cruelty. They are doing it out of fear. They have learned to regulate their emotions by creating distance, and that distance, though painful to others, feels like safety to them. The more pressure they feel to open up, the more their defense mechanisms activate, pulling them back into isolation. It's not that they don't want to connect. It's that they don't yet trust that connection won't consume them. For an avoidant person to truly engage in love, they must first learn to understand their own fears. Avoidance is not a personality flaw. It's an emotional adaptation to earlier pain, a survival strategy that once protected them but now limits their ability to experience the depth of connection they secretly crave. Healing begins when they start to recognize this pattern for what it is, a form of self-protection that no longer serves them. The process is gradual and requires courage. It means allowing themselves to be seen in their vulnerability, to risk being misunderstood, and to accept that intimacy involves a degree of uncertainty. It also means learning to communicate rather than withdraw when fear arises. Saying, "I feel overwhelmed right now," or "I need a little space," is far healthier than disappearing emotionally. Small steps of honesty, they begin to build the emotional muscles that allow them to stay present and love even when it feels uncomfortable. The partner of an avoidant individual plays a vital role in this healing process, but not by trying to fix or force change. Love cannot thrive in control. What helps is consistency, patience, and emotional steadiness. Avoidant people are deeply perceptive. They notice tone, energy, and subtle shifts in behavior. If they sense pressure, they retreat. But if they sense safety, acceptance, and non-judgment, they begin to open. The partner's job is not to chase, but to invite, to create an emotional environment where closeness feels safe, not suffocating. This doesn't mean tolerating neglect or walking on eggshells. It means understanding that connection with an avoidant person grows best through gentle reassurance and mutual respect, not through demands for emotional intensity. Over time, the steadiness allows the avoidant individual to lower their defenses and experience intimacy as something grounding rather than threatening. For the avoidant person, one of the greatest lessons is that love does not mean losing oneself. True intimacy is not about merging into another person, but about two individuals choosing to share their separate worlds without fear. When they begin to trust this idea, love transforms from something that threatens their identity into something that expands it. See that closeness and autonomy can coexist, that being emotionally open does not erase their independence but strengthens it. Vulnerability becomes a bridge rather than a burden, and they learn that it's safe to let someone in. This realization often comes slowly through moments of connection that feel real, through partners who stay when they expect abandonment, experiences that contradict their old fears. Avoidant love, when healed, becomes one of the most powerful expressions of emotional maturity. Once the avoidant person feels safe enough to love fully, their loyalty and depth of care are profound. They love not out of dependency, but from a place of choice. They bring stability, calmness, and devotion. Their independence, once a wall, a grounding force in the relationship, but this transformation requires inner work. It means confronting old wounds, acknowledging the pain of past rejections, and allowing oneself to feel emotions that were long buried, redefining what strength truly is, understanding that strength is not about emotional distance, but about the capacity to stay open even when it hurts. Journey also teaches partners important truths about love. It teaches that love is not about constant closeness or emotional intensity, but about trust and balance. It's about giving without losing oneself, supporting without smothering, and loving without demanding perfection. When the partner learns to love an avoidant person with empathy and boundaries, they too grow stronger, wiser, and more grounded. The relationship becomes a mutual space of healing rather than a battlefield of unmet needs. Both individuals learn that love is not about fixing the other, but about understanding each other's fears and growing through them together. The evolution of avoidant love mirrors the evolution of the human heart itself, the movement from fear to trust, from control to surrender, from loneliness to connection. It's a slow unfolding, like dawn breaking after a long night. There will be moments of resistance, times when the old fears return, times when the avoidant person withdraws without explanation. Pause and ask themselves why, if they can name their fear instead of acting on it. They begin to take back control from their defenses. In doing so, they move closer to the love they've been pushing away for so long. It's in these moments that real transformation happens, not through grand gestures or sudden breakthroughs, but through small, quiet acts of courage repeated over time. Ultimately, avoidant love teaches one of the deepest truths about human connection, that we are not meant to protect ourselves from love, but to grow through it. Love will always carry risk. It will expose weaknesses, stir insecurities, and challenge control, but it also heals, expands, and liberates. The avoidant person, once afraid of being consumed by love, learns that real love doesn't take away freedom. It creates it. It allows them to be seen fully and still accepted, to be held without being trapped, to be closed without losing themselves. And in that discovery, they experience a kind of peace that avoidance could never provide, the peace of knowing that it's safe to love, safe to feel, and safe to be both strong and vulnerable at the same time.